find that suspicious. Wait for a second. Okay. Again, I kind of don't want to keep talking about things that I've done tried to make this video many different times, and it's always either the lighting, the aesthetic, or you can't hear me. Just like now, I'm sure you really cannot hear me, but this is better than sitting in a bathroom. So we'll just go on with it anyways. A hard truth that I face is that I am not lonely. I'm just alone. Hi, if you're new here, my name is Keisha Monte, and this is From Your Big Sister, a series where we talk about things that desperately need to be talked about, or I just kind of talk about whatever's on the top of my head. So, I have a script. I naturally have a script for these things, and because I did it so much, I'm kind of overburnt with the script, so I'm going to go off the top of my head about it. And sometimes I lose the plot of the series and try to remember what I'm trying to relate this to. So, this one, is that a porcupine? Is that a porcupine? No. Um, um, right. So there is a difference between being alone and being lonely. Let's just break this down for a second. Lonely is where you feel a sense of emptiness on the inside, and you have to find something to fulfill it or find people that's going to fulfill it, and you take on many different types of form of way of fulfilling that. Now that can be eating, that can be spending, that can be bonding, that can be physical activity, that, you know. Um, and being alone is solitude, and that is not as scary as what being lonely is. I feel like a lot of people believe being alone is worse than being lonely, but when you're alone, it's commonly, if you're healing properly, is more peace, more again, like I said, solitude or relaxation or stillness. Now, with that being said, I kind of want to talk about the difference, besides the quick grades that I did, and the difference that I've noticed and the advice that I would give to someone as I'm growing to be in my alone phase. So we're going to start with the younger version. What I would say to my little sister and my little brother, who's, I believe, trying to, from what I can witness with my eyes, is trying to navigate themselves to just find something or somebody. Now, what I mean by that is that they're hopping from hobby to hobby, skill to skill, friend group to friend group. Their aesthetic is changing and changing and changing. Not only is that an indicator that they're trying to find themselves, but that's also an indicator that maybe they are trying to fulfill something that's within. Now, I am a victim. I won't even say victim. I am a person who been through similar stories. I wouldn't say as a young child because I very much knew the type of young child that I was. I was a bit wild. I was very much outside, not in like I was outside with my friends. I was spending the night. I was trying to go to all the hangout spots. So I wasn't necessarily trying to avoid being alone. I just I was just like hanging out. But so I didn't have firsthand experience of that until I got older. But again, now that I'm older and I can relate to someone younger to me, I would say to someone that's younger to me, my little brother's little sister, is that if they're switching multiple times and they are trying to avoid being alone, I would ask them like, what about being alone makes you feel so uncomfortable? Why are you not trying to sit with yourself? Or what is the first thing you want to do to help identify why you don't want to be by yourself or what's avoiding you from being by yourself? And from my experience with my cousins, I know that it can be a bit hard because, again, they don't know whether they want to talk about it with me or not. You know, it's up to them. But even then, even with the question being so black or white to someone, they still might not be able to um, say. they still might not be able to say it, or they don't have the emotional intelligence skills to be able to vocally say it back to me so I can understand. But when I'm trying to guide them to be more of being alone, I would just be in the same presence with them, but not really doing anything. So it gives them ample time to either be uncomfortable in that space or be natural in that space or be able to vocalize something that they're looking to do within that space and time because they like they're just sitting there. So as young as you are being there sitting through that, you don't really know exactly what to do. So it's like you're gonna latch on to something that's not gonna make you feel that's gonna help you feel less anxious, and that is something that I would look for. And once I've done that, I would then like help them understand what being alone really is and how it might be my dad. Help them identify what being alone is, and of course encourage them. They might be young and they don't understand that, but that does not mean that that's not something I'm gonna still do. I don't care how young you are, I'm still gonna do it. Um, Now, if I see them always hanging out with somebody, and I do mean this as black as white as that, like you always have to be with a friend, you always want to go do something, and I don't mean like, oh, it's a difference with being with the same group of people and going to go do multiple different things than you always hanging out with people. Like if I see my little brother or sister come in the house and I'm like, oh, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, I'm about to go do this. And then I'm like, okay, where's Cassie or where's Daryl? You're usually with them, and they're like, oh, they're doing something or they're off with their family, so I'm just gonna go hang out with such and such. Well, I know for a fact you don't naturally hang out with such and such as much as you do Cassie or Daryl, so you only ever hang out with such and such when Cassie and Daryl is not available for you. So that would make me think that, oh, you don't want to be by yourself, or you just want to have somebody to fill in whatever position you're looking for whatever moment, and you're choosing such and such to do that. Not only am I going to correct that behavior, not only am I going to ask you what's so wrong with just like what's so wrong with just not having Cassie and Dora right now and just doing something by yourself. Now, that is me being a big sister to a little boy or a little girl, and this is me being a big sister as a woman going closer to her 30s, talking to my 25-year-old sister or brother. I imagine that naturally when you are 20 to 25 and you are a girl and you are fighting being alone or lonely, you do find yourself being in toxic relationships or toxic friendships with certain people, and now you're stuck in said toxic relationship or toxic friendships with certain people. And I feel like what I would naturally tell my little brother, I'm sorry, my little sister, we're going to start there first, but I would tell my little sister is like, hey, sister girl, bitch, you're going to fuck up your life. And I feel like you can be a little bit more uncut and raw when you're talking to someone a bit of older age. I know that it was a transition from when I had my big sister and big sisters, and now I'm able to say like, bitch, you lying. Like it was weird at first because I couldn't naturally do something like that because I was so little. But now that I'm older, they kind of understand that. Ricky Morty, I'm glad I have to do less editing. More so at that point when you get older and you're trying to say like, hey, you're avoiding doing this, or you're only hanging out with him, or you keep coming back to him for this, or you're only hanging out with her, or you keep hanging out with this girl because of this. Oh my goodness. Right at that point, I feel like you could say more like realistic situations or jog a memory to like a friend, associate, or a sister or a brother that was around for when you were experiencing said things that you see them going after or following through. And I feel like using yourself is a good example to some people. I know most people don't really care for that because they have an ability to separate their own self and then the person, like they have a difference to separate their own self versus the person that is trying to give them said advice. But I feel like your own self is the best example for certain things. Because bitch, either I'm going to learn to not do what you do, or I'm going to do what you do because I think I know what I'm talking about. But regardless of that, I feel like that's something that, again, I would just remind her, like, hey, you at 16, you saw me hanging out with such and such and doing this, and then when I turned 20 and I realized she really wasn't my friend, and I told you that, hey, long ago she was showing me this, and da-da-da-da-da, like, I see you doing the same thing. And, of course, the decision and the choice is solely up to them. But that's the, I feel like that's the difference when it comes to being alone versus being lonely. I don't feel like that, I don't feel like being alone is a bad thing as a person who's been alone for a while. And I don't feel like being lonely is, I feel like being alone isn't a bad thing, but I feel like being lonely is a vulnerable. I don't feel like being alone is being. I don't feel like being alone is a bad thing, but I feel like being vulnerable leaves you open to just about anything. I feel like that being lonely can also transition to you being gullible, and what's that saying, if you go for anything you'll fall for everything, or if you go for anything you'll fall for nothing, something like that. I feel like that is what it is. I'm trying to think. No matter, I feel like no matter what age group that we're avoiding being alone, whether it's 15, 16, 17, 18, 20, 38, 40, whatever it is, I feel like I feel like we should not avoid that time. Yes, Father. No. I feel like we should not avoid that time to sit with yourself, to really take in what you're supposed to take in life. Like, being alone has caused me to be more self-aware than what I already was, and being alone has also caused me to be able to articulate certain things a bit more, and it just allows so much growth within myself. So I kind of don't want to see people not taking advantage of your alone time or being alone and actually using it to a strength for you. But that's all we have today. Again, my name is Keisha Monte, and this is From Your Big Sister, a series where we talk about things that desperately need to be talked about, or I kind of just talk about whatever is on my mind. I'll see you in the next one.